Welcome to Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie. That's me. This is a podcast that celebrates artists and advocates for community engagement. And this is We Can't Go Back, a video series in partnership with Creative Generation meant to examine, interrogate, and confront racist policies and systems in the arts. This series amplifies leaders in the arts and culture field who are driving radical change in communities through anti-racist and liberatory practices. Subscribe to the Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm recording this from Brooklyn on the stolen lands of the Lenape and the Canarsie nations. And I identify as a Black cisgendered woman who pays respect and uplifts my ancestors across the US and beyond, who are in the African diaspora from Mississippi to all sorts of places and from Western Africa. I also pay respect and uplift the indigenous diaspora that are woven into my history and DNA through a network of solidarity and love from the Cherokee, the Creek, and the Uchi nations. Now, let's welcome our guest for today, Khalia Davis. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
Oh no, I'm beyond excited. So can you tell everyone, what is your role in arts and arts education, and how do you embed anti-racism practices in your work?
Hello, everybody out there. My name is Khalia Davis, she, her pronouns. I am a Bay Area, California native. I was splitting my time between there and New York City, and I have since returned to the Bay Area. I consider myself a multidisciplinary artist because I started out as a professional actor, but as I was working as a professional actor, I was also teaching the craft and the arts and dance, and I since have identified myself as a choreographer, a director, and most recently a dramaturg. So I feel like I encompass quite the spectrum of artistry, and I believe that in every single part of it, I bring myself, which is a Black identifying woman, into all of those pieces, also recognizing that I am typically in communities where I stand out, and I want to make sure that I am leading with love always, so that individuals, specifically younger kids, are able to see someone like myself in authority and recognize that it is possible. And so when I bring into the classroom books to bring to life on stage, ideas and crafts that have to do with BIPOC stories and their history, it is not something that is crazy or insane, because they've already seen myself and maybe some of my other colleagues as well.
And you recently got a new position, no?
It has been announced, and tomorrow I actually start my first day. I've been onboarded, everything. I got the email address, so it's really official. I am the new artistic director of Bay Area Children's Theater.
Oh, I just want to give you a big congratulations. I'm so excited. I got a little bit of the information just a little ahead of that announcement, but nevertheless, so thrilled for you and thrilled for the company too.
What many don't realize, and I haven't been able to process and put into words how excited I am, but also how much of this feels so right, because, and I'll just share quickly that my journey with Bay Area Children's Theater started about 8 or 9 years ago as an actor for them. And Nina Meehan, who is now going to be assuming the role of CEO for the company that will still maintain the infrastructure and executive directorship, she saw something in me, and not only did she see something in me and then cast me in a show, but then gave me work as a teacher and then continued to put me in front of people that could help propel my own career. She was somebody who put put herself behind me and used her influence to introduce me and to give myself visibility, knowing that I would take that and then run with it. So for many people, they don't realize that actually, that I feel like this is a long time coming. I've always said that Bay Area Children's Theater has felt like a theater home for myself. And I am very excited at the opportunity to have this type of influence going forward.
You and I met last year at the TYA USA conference. I believe we sat down next to each other at a few different events. And I always just thought, wow, I want to know who this person is. She seems like very knowledgeable, super smiley, which I am very much drawn to. And yet I remember sitting next to you or near you when we were watching Pearl Clige speak,
Yes.
who is this amazing poet, and she's the resident poet, I believe, at Alliance Theater. No?
Yes, I think her title is poet slash playwright for the Alliance.
And I just remember you and I just being like,
all the sounds.
all the sounds. And so I wanna ask you the next question, just talking about that. Like, we made a connection. Since then I've seen you everywhere and it's been really delightful. But you just talked about all these different ways that you are or identify as an artist, or how you practice your art. And now you're an artistic director about to start tomorrow. So let's talk about how artists can be emboldened to forge the future of arts and arts education from a fiercely anti-racist lens.
I love being able to think in that particular way because it draws on the idea of action, using your art to propel some sort of positive change for the community that you are creating that art in. And I am not a stranger to activism where I'm from. We have Oakland, Berkeley, there's so much rich history and we see it today happening. And the thing that is so exciting is that I'm seeing forms of art being used to amplify the marginalized voices. And when I think about teaching artistry, when I think about TYA and I think about theater as a whole, something that we could do is to take a note of those people who are putting themselves out there on the front lines, exercising their art, doing a lot more of that theater of the oppressed style, guerrilla theater that is speaking to the social justice and social injustices that are happening in the community. And how can we utilize that and kind of weave that into the fabric of what we're trying to build as an institution that creates art as well. So my goal is actually, now that I'm officially back in the Bay Area and I'm born and raised here, is to embrace all of that and to see who has been doing the work. So it doesn't feel like I'm coming up with something new, because we are not. Anti-racism work has been happening for years and years and years. And I believe that thankfully we have been emboldened because of the bravery and the courage of so many of our colleagues in the field who have just put their work out there without any sort of reservation or apology, or they don't even ask permission. They're just putting it out there. And it doesn't harm, in my opinion, anybody. If anything, it's making this world so much better to see that art. So I would rather partner and talk to and learn from that community of artists and see how I can then infuse that into places like Bay Area Children's Theater. And it's for kids, but at the same time, what more can we do to help educate them through the work that we're creating?
I'd love for you to talk about the work that you just created, and tell us a little bit about that process. And again, just the process of working with an entire cast full of, I believe that they were all Black identifying actors, yes?
Selfishly, I got what I wanted, which was to work with an entire cast of Black identifying artists. And recently I was on a panel where someone asked about that and what that felt like. And the thing that resonated the most with me is that I got to see firsthand how beautiful and complex our Blackness actually is. And I was hoping that that could shine through in our piece. Our main character identifies as multiracial. He has...
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Can you just name the piece? Nobody said what that is.
Oh, hi, everyone. The piece that we are talking about is my show, A Kid's Play About Racism, which is based off of Jelani Memory's book, A Kid's Book About Racism. And in this play, I took Jelani and I made him a kid. And Jelani himself identifies multiracial, Black dad, white mom. And so my actor, to honor that representation, he is also someone who is multiracial as well. And him plus a couple others who identify as multiracial were able to express their feelings about what it's like growing up in that body. And I felt like I learned so much from that perspective because that is not my lived experience as someone who fully embodies the Black diaspora. And I also learned so much from those that are situated in different parts of the country, because I don't know if people are aware, but my show happened now, which means that we were not allowed to congregate in physical space. So we had to create the show distance and digitally. So that actually was a blessing because we were able to hire artists all over the country. We were even able to hire an artist from Honolulu, Hawaii, and he had a great dialogue with us during our table work where he expressed that this was the first piece where he got to accept, appreciate, and uplift his Blackness. Mm-hmm. Everything he has done in his life, I will not age him on this thing, but his life as an artist has been to uplift his Hawaiian heritage, which is also beautiful and wonderful, but he has never had an opportunity until this project to do so. So just getting an opportunity to experience the beautifulness that is Blackness, the spectrum that we live on, and embracing that, and seeing how that could hopefully help get more people to embrace and accept us that aren't Black.
Well, that's the thing, right? There were the audiences are also multiracial, right?
Yes.
And you were having conversations with kids who got to do like a preview, I guess, or they saw it.
They did. We had a tester audience.
Yeah, tester audience. And so can you talk a little bit about two things, actually? Mm-hmm. Because I think that what I love about having you on is that we have this piece that, is based off of adapting a book that is meant to help families be able to talk about racism and that the protagonist is a kid, and what does that mean, and how to have that conversation, but also the idea of empathy for a kid of color, a Black boy, or a multiracial boy, depending on how it's viewed, I guess. That concept to me is really exciting, and I'm curious about the kids' responses, the kinds of conversations that you had with Jelani and the artists, mm-hmm. either before or after hearing some of the kids' responses to the book piece.
We had such amazing children watch this piece, and they also were from all over the country because we reached out to our over 41 producing partners and asked them if they had any families who would like to participate. So that first and foremost was exciting because I knew that meant that all these kids would have a different perspective and viewpoint on race and racism, and also just the idea of watching children's theater. So we had kids who were very, very young, and then we had some kids who were preteens or middle schoolers, and we had this great range. And a lot of the questions that they had were really insightful questions. I think something that stood out the most to me was there was a child during one of the interviews that asked if it was okay to be white. As a white boy, he watched the piece, and that was something that he took away from that. And my actor David was on the call, and he took that and he was like, it is more than okay. It is wonderful. But what we want is to show that it's okay to be other than white. And that's the goal, because unfortunately our society has deemed whiteness closest to greatness, closest to cleanliness, closest to godliness, all of the things. And Blackness has been closer to darkness, to evil, to violence. And we wanted to shift that. So to have a child who identifies as white question if it was actually okay to be wasn't something that was like, oh no, oh shoot. It was more like, oh good, you're starting to really appreciate and maybe empathize with a little Black boy who is growing up in a world where it takes a lot for him to realize that who he is accepted and that it is not a sin. Skin is not a sin, which was something else a young lady said, which was incredible. I was like, you are 10. That's amazing. I have learned so much. I want to share, through their permission, I'm allowed to share this. So we had a lot of really beautiful, guarded conversations as a cast because I wanted them to know that they were in a safe space with me. And even though we were creating a children's show, we were dealing with a very heavy subject that affects us all in different ways, much like Jelani, the main character, has these different feelings that are being affected by racism. And something that was really touching was there was a moment where one of our cast members who plays the role of Disgust, Jasenia, she said, Black is not a color, it's a culture. And that became the anthem of our opening song because we realized that's exactly what this is. That's what we want to showcase, that it's more than our skin tone, who we are. And at the same time, it calls to light when we have been culturally appropriated. So if Black is not a color, it's a culture, you see that, you like it, and then you take it. Are you taking over something that doesn't belong to you, or are you uplifting it and appreciating the culture for what it is? So it was a really beautiful, moment. And then the final moment that stuck out to me in those special conversations was this idea of making sure that as I am referring to his skin color as brown, that we are dealing with a Black boy's lived experience and not necessarily a brown boy's lived experience, which there are a lot of similarities within the full BIPOC community, but we wanted to really highlight the fact that this was a story of a Black kid with brown skin. So that I was able to take to Jelani Memory himself. He, in turn, gave me permission to use a lot of lines and language that was used towards him as he was growing up in Portland, Oregon. So the words, many of the words that you hear are directly from his book or actually just directly from his experience growing up.
The idea of Portland, like what's happening in Portland right now, and that the author grew up there and experienced these acts of racism, microaggressions towards him, that led him to wanting to figure out how to have these conversations with his own kids, which is ultimately why he wrote the book, right?
Yes.
He wrote it, he didn't intend for it to be published initially, and then he
wrote it for 6 sets of eyes, his 6 children, and he really wrote it for his Black son. He really wanted to have his son understand who he was. And he says that his book, as well as my play, thankfully, gave a beautiful window into who he identifies as, and makes it accessible for his kids as well as for all kids, which is really great.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, families are often wanting to create a better world for their kids, right? I mean, if you have kids in your family. And so I'm curious about the future and what does a liberated and racially just world look like?
I feel like it's when you walk into a place and you do not first recognize how you stand out in that place. Something that I think we are drawn to are those images of multi-diverse schoolyards, right? We love seeing all of these kids from all over the place, all congregated together at school, holding hands, playing sports together, because there's this idea that what bonds them together is not by how they look, but it's what there are other attributes about that. And I think that when we are in a fully inclusive, racially justice world, it'll be a world where we do not need to remark on consistently like, oh, I'm Black, so there's going to be some things here because I'm Black. Like, I don't have to do that. I can walk into any space and be judged on more than my Blackness. I can be judged on more than the fact that I identify as a female. That's when I think we will have made this beautiful shift, but that hasn't happened yet. Everywhere I go, I still hold on to my identifiers because I feel like I have to share that. Even in my own community, I feel like I have to share, I'm Black, don't worry, you got me. It's like, no, you should just know that. We should know it. We should accept it. And now what else? Oh, I'm an artist. I'm a teacher. I have these gifts that I can give to you and help in the cause. I can serve in this way. What else can connect us and unify us?
But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and share more about your artistic process and this latest project of yours. I hope that more people get to see. I know a lot of people who have. It was on demand on Broadway, right? Broadway on demand, is that what it's called?
Yes, the
For a
way you
limited
phrased
time.
it though made it sound very exciting. But
Say that again?
because the way that you shaped it, you were like, it was on demand on Broadway.
On Broadway.
So I'm like, yes, but no, invert that. Broadway on demand is where it was living. But we have had such an incredible response that I can't say anything for sure because literally nothing has been written down. But I can say that we will be able to have this live on because of the popularity and because of educators who have been reaching out consistently to many different people, being like, we need this. And to hear them say, we need that, knowing what the subject matter is, I feel like we did our job. It's great.
Well, I agree. I think that it's needed. More people need to get to see it. Kids need to see it. There's lots of curriculum that I know has already been created that can be created around this. And it could serve as just a good piece of theater, I think, and made specifically for this sort of viewing experience, which is I think an innovation in and of itself, and ultimately serve as a great tool to open up more and more dialogue, which I believe art is part of how we forge this future. You talked about it before as well, that we hold a mirror up, right? But audiences need to actually have more tools to be able to experience, be able to discuss what's going on in their heart and minds after they see something. But I think that there's also a deeper impacts that I think can come out of a piece like a kid's play about racism. I'm so happy for you. I'm excited to see how your journey continues. Please, let's stay in touch.
Yes, thank you.
We live in the same country, but now we're on different coasts.
I
know. But there's always Zoom.
Now, yeah, everybody's like, but there's Zoom. We're fine.
There's Zoom. We're fine. Exactly. So thank you again, Khalia. And thank you to all of you for watching Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie. This conversation and more will be on the audio platform. So subscribe to SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, we won't go back. We can't go back. Onwards.
Now is my time to shine. When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Doubters all the night, and unto them you shine bright. Cause inside your head, on goes the light. Ignite.